everyone, my name is REDRUP. This is the It's Not a Phase podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by emo solo artist and singer-songwriter Days to Waste. We talk about their debut album, Forget Me When the Summer Ends, how it expands on a loose concept that he's been working on throughout some older songs, how he's developed as a songwriter and an artist over the years, and loads more. Before we get into the chat, please consider taking a few seconds of your time to help me out by supporting the podcast. You can hit subscribe or follow wherever you're checking this out so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. You can leave a review or a comment. You can give the podcast a follow on social media. And there's also a Patreon and a web store if you did want to go the extra mile. You can find all the links to everything that I've just mentioned in the description of this episode, or you can head to itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now, here's my chat with Days to Waste. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of the It's Not a Phase podcast, where I'm joined by Ben Willie, aka Days to Waste. How's it going, dude?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
All good, man. All good. I guess we'll kind of get to the big news with you. Debut album, Forget Me When the Summer Ends,
Yep.
out on January 24th.
Mhm.
How are you feeling about getting this out there, like first full-length album?
I'm so ready, man. It's been in the work for, uh, I guess it's been an idea for quite a while, and I began the concept and like writing this album like a while ago. I'd say like 2 or 3 years ago, and
Right.
but it's been, I guess, an official production for about a year now, and yeah, I'm so excited to like finally release this, because when I originally made that first song, When the Summer Ends, that song was made with the intention of telling a bigger story behind it.
Right.
And I knew that I wanted to make an album called Forget Me When the Summer Ends. And yeah, it's honestly super surreal that it's actually, like everything's falling into fruition.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, like a debut album is such a milestone for any band or artist, isn't it? Like it's just
Mhm.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it still doesn't feel as real as it should. Sometimes I have to remind myself when I come home from work you know, that gosh, I gotta release an album here in like a month.
Yeah, yeah, crazy, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess like with a debut album, that brings a lot of like new eyes and ears to who you are. So there'll be people listening to this who don't know who you are. I know you've been around for a few years releasing music, but yeah, in the grand scheme of things, you're a relatively new artist. So can you just briefly explain how you got into alternative music and becoming, a singer, songwriter, artist yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Well, my family has always been we've always been musicians. Like my mom, my dad, even my sister. Like we've always been musically like involved in some way. And when I was really young, um, I wanted to play the drums. I'd say like when I was 8 years old, I wanted to play the drums. And we'd always go to church, and I'd see my friend on the drums on the church worship team, and be like, man, I want to do that. And so I started to learn how to play drums, and that's slowly kind of faded into, like, after a few years of doing that and playing on the worship team a little bit, like getting to play on the worship team, after a little while of learning how to play drums, I learned how to play the guitar. And I guess being involved in like the church music part of things and performing and singing kind of sparked the ability to I guess be able to play music.
Yeah,
And when I was in like early middle school, I found like the emo scene or whatever, like the Warped Tour scene, as I like to call it, just because it's simpler. And when you
yeah.
say the Warped Tour scene, everybody knows what you're talking
It's just
about.
like an umbrella term, isn't it? Like everyone
Yeah.
knows what. Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, after that, I mean, it was history. Like I would watch these like Brian Stars interviews and um, music videos, and on Rise Records and Sumerian Records, and like just I was just so obsessed with this scene and this genre. And yeah, it was history. There's this one particular artist called Catching Your Clouds, and I remember when I was in middle school, I would watch these music videos and like be like, man, I really want to be in a band, like an emo band, and like I wanted to play drums for like an emo band, but no, I didn't have anybody around me who wanted to do the same thing.
Hmm.
And I found this artist called Catching Your Clouds, and he was doing it himself. He was making this acoustic music in his room with like a USB microphone and like an old electric keyboard, and that was my first like introduction to like, oh my gosh, I can do this myself if I want to,
Yeah.
and that's what sparked Days to Waste. I think is seeing that kid and finding other similar acoustic artists like Say We Can Fly, Never Stop Never, and This Wildlife, and yeah, it was just a really exciting time for me, and I was
Yeah.
like super inspired, and all I wanted to do was make music.
Yeah. Yeah. So why did you go with the name Days to Waste then to kind of like to brand yourself as?
Oh man, okay. So I was 14 years old. No, I was 13. I was 13 years old, and I already knew I wanted to do the acoustic stuff.
Yeah.
And Pierce the Veil, Sleeping the Sirens were coming to my local mall, my
Right.
local Tilly's in my mall, to do a signing. And I was like, and I was just a kid. I haven't even gone to Warped Tour before this, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. I gotta meet these guys. And I like in my head I was like, oh, I'm gonna tell them that I'm a musician and that like I'm an aspiring musician.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna be a musician, I should have a name. And so I grabbed a notebook and I wrote down like 10 or 20. And like for like an hour, I was like going over them. I'm sorry if you can hear the cat.
So good. I can't hear anything, so you're all good.
Uh, yeah, so for like an hour, I was going over these names, and I eventually landed on one, and that was Days to Waste.
Right.
And yeah, I mean the rest is history. I came up with that name when I was 13, so 12 years ago now. And I knew when I was like, because I eventually did start doing music under that name, under a YouTube channel called Days to Waste, where I would do like covers and stuff. Um, yeah, I knew that I wanted to stay true to that 13-year-old kid's like dream. And so that's why I kept the name Days to Waste even after all these years, because I could have changed it at any time. I just
Yeah.
didn't.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick Pierce the Veil or Sleeping with Sirens, which one are you going to go with?
Oh man. Oh man. I'm gonna say Pierce the Veil. They're too iconic. They're too like Sleeping with Sirens is incredible, and Kellen Quinn is amazing, but I mean Pierce the Veil is just like that iconic to me, I guess.
Yeah. Fair enough,
I'm
dude.
I'm seeing them next year in June.
Cool.
Pierce the Veil and Sleeping with Sirens. I'm so excited.
That'll be amazing. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, that's crazy then. So like obviously you've been making music under that name for the past few years. You've got plenty of followers, you've got loads of streams as well. Do you recall the moment when things kind of started to take off for you a little bit? Like you started to think, oh, right, well, people are noticing, people are liking this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple moments like that. Yeah. I mean, there there's always steady growth, but
Yeah.
there's also moments where there's like a shoot in streams or a shoot in listeners, and it's like, oh, holy shit. Um, the first time was when I released Love Sick with Say We Can Fly. Um, yeah, that was a pretty big boost in recognition for me. which is really cool. And then I guess the other notable one was When the Summer Ends, when I dropped the first version of When the Summer Ends, and it did well on TikTok, and that was cool because it wasn't related to anything other than me, you know. It was just kind of I got lucky with the algorithm, and people just seemed to really like it. And but honestly, other than that, it has just been steady growth, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I've
it's been
noticed as well, like you've got a handful of songs not on the record, like Whisper, where you do refer to the album's title. And then like the song When the Summer Ends, I think that was released like 2 years ago before the album was like announced or anything like that. Um, and you mentioned earlier, you've always wanted to kind of have an album with that name. So I guess can you kind of expand on what that title means, what that reference is, and its importance to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was all part of the process of writing it. And I had this idea in my head and then and it wasn't just like, oh, this name is cool. Like the meaning behind Forget Me When the Summer just meant a lot to me. And, it's kind of this album is kind of a sequel to everything that I have been writing before. Like all of my songs kind of not I guess not all of them, um, but most of my songs, um, I'll put like cross references in there, or I'll talk about the same subject between them and mention the same things. And I guess putting "Forget Me When the Summer Ends" like that vocal line
Yeah.
in some songs that aren't even on the album um, are kind of doing a similar thing, just in a more literal way.
Yeah.
Instead mentioning, walking by the river or like uh, having a fire, I'm saying forget me when the summer ends. This is a literal reference to this album that's coming out, the story that's told in that album, um, the song that came before when the summer ends. And yeah, I don't know. I really appreciate in other artists when you listen to a song, you're like, oh my God, this is talking about something else. And I don't think it requires having to be like in the sense of like being on the same album.
Yeah.
Like Whisper, I Say, Forget Me When the Summer Ends. And that song's not on the album. Um, but it is referencing this work that is going to come later and also kind of has come before because When the Summer Ends, that song had already come out at that point. But yeah, I guess I a lot of musicians do write songs about the same thing, and they're in like multiple songs, and they talk about the similar subjects in between the songs. And yeah, putting that vocal line "Forget Me When the Summer Ends" is just a little bit of a more literal reference to songs that have come before and songs that will come after.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's cool like when bands kind of do like a throwback to like a lyric or a song or something they've done in the past. And it's just kind of like it's something for the fans to dig deeper into as well, like kind of cross-referencing it, like saying, oh, why have they done that? Why is it what are the references here? What are they linking to? Why do these two songs kind of have that same thing going on?
Hmm.
Just
Yeah,
think
no,
it's
it's super fun. I love little Easter eggs. I always love putting little Easter eggs in my songs.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
So yeah, but the song When the Summer Ends is probably the oldest one on the record, at least to the public, right? I think it came out in 2022.
Yeah.
Um, and you said before, that the concept of the album's been going for a while. So when did it come to the moment where you're like, oh, let's actually make the album? Was it just you had these few songs together that kind of had a like say sit into this concept, or was it that the intention was always from the start of making this album like this is going to be the record?
Um, so I guess the whole story behind making this album is like for a long time I have been writing about not the same thing, but a very specific time in my life that even the name Days to Waste, even that kind of the meaning behind that references to. And I know I came up with the name when I was 13, but it has grown to mean something more to me. And it's kind of poetic in that way of like yeah, I came up with this name when I was 13 because it sounded cool, but it actually really relates to my life and things I've gone through and stuff like that. And so a lot of my songs are talking about a very specific time in my life and a very specific feeling. And I guess just through growing up and through changing and life is obviously going to change the older you get. And I guess because I've been writing these songs for so long, I knew that there had to be a point in time where I started to move away from that subject. I started to move away from writing about that time of my life, writing about the person that I was, because I am growing. Not only am I growing from that person, but I'm growing from holding on to that part of my life so hard. And in 2022, when I wrote When the Summer Ends, that song was supposed to be the last thing before it was called When the Summer Ends. I knew I needed to write a song that was I was like, okay, this needs to be the last time I talk about this. This needs to be the last time that I kind of dwell on this thing. And I wrote it and I recorded it and I released it, and it didn't feel complete yet. I feel like I still had more to say,
Right.
and that's when I was like, okay, this needs to be a record. This needs to be an album. This needs to be kind of a bigger story because I feel like I still have more to say. And that's when I started, writing more songs and writing this kind of the story.
Yeah. Does it feel now like that you've made this record, that that story is now complete? You think it's gone to that point now?
Yes,
Yeah.
and which is crazy because I never thought I would feel that way.
Yeah.
It was always a maybe. It was always a we'll see. And I wrote this thing from start to finish, and yeah, it really does feel complete to me now.
Yeah. That's good. 'Cause it's crazy because you can't, I don't know this moment in your life, but when you try and put things away, like you think, like you did, like, oh, I'll write this song and that will kind of put it to bed. But it doesn't always pan out the way that you plan it to. So it's good that you now, you're at a place now where you're comfortable to kind of put that behind you.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost like it does kind of feel like a weight on my chest because I'm so happy remembering this time in my life, and I'm so happy with who that person was, and I'm not. It doesn't feel like this thing that I'm losing. It just feels like this thing that I get to keep. I don't
Yeah.
know if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
guess I guess I guess when you're growing up from being a teenager or from being a kid or from a very specific time in your life, it can almost feel like I don't want to lose that because I'm scared to lose that because life is scary and life is changing and I'm not ready for it. And yeah, it just kind of feels at a point where I'm just grateful to have experienced that. I'm just grateful to be able to remember that time in my life.
Yeah. And you're just like everyone else, you're just growing up and evolving and everyone changes as people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's good as well that you mentioned that you're not only do you still identify with the name Days to Waste, but it seems you're identifying with more over time, which, coming up with a name as a teenager is a rarity. Like you look at a band like The Devil Wears Prada and they hate their band names. But yeah,
Really? They do? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah, they hate it.
That's funny.
But I think at this place it's too late in their career now to kind of change name, isn't it? So
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of set in stone with that.
yeah, yeah. Um, so we mentioned before, like a debut album is such a significant milestone for any band or artist to come to. Um, what are you hoping to achieve with this album? What are you hoping people take away from it when they hear it?
Oh, I just hope people. This is gonna sound so like I don't know, Tom. I just really hope people like it.
Yeah,
It's different from my other works, and I hope more than like it. I hope people understand it, um, and I hope people appreciate it. Um, I've always made art, and I made music kind of for me in a way, and I love being able to put it out, and I love that people get to listen to it and appreciate it, and but it is all kind of coming from a place of like, okay, here's what I have to say. This is kind of coming from a very personal place, and I just really hope people understand it, and I hope people like it and appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. And how does it feel for you, like obviously these lyrics are quite personal. Do you ever kind of hesitate when you write personal songs? Because I think you do it in a way where it's not abundantly obvious what the song's about, so people can kind of, attach their own stories to it and stuff, but you're still kind of wearing your heart on your sleeve a little bit and putting it out there for the whole world to examine for years.
Yeah, it it doesn't feel like super um personal in the way of like oh, I'm letting people into this part of my life, because I feel like in my songs I'm relatively vague but specific at the same time.
Yeah,
Um, I don't even really think about it at this point. I've always written from a personal place, even
yeah,
before I started releasing the music that I wrote. And so it's not even something that it's like, ooh, I should be more. I should you know do something else, because if it's not coming from that place, if it's not personal, if it's not something that matters to me, I don't see the point,
hmm,
because that's why I started this thing in the first place. Actually, writing and making music, not Days to Waste, not meeting Vic Fuentes and Kellen Quinn and the Tillies. You
yeah,
know, um, it, making and releasing the music part always came from a place of okay, this is how I feel, this is my story, this is an outlet for me because of something that I'm going through, and I need to put that somewhere.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think, at least from what I could find, so I think your first song was Suffocate, and that came out in January 2019. So this album's going out pretty much 5 years to when that song came out. Like if
Absolutely.
you look at like, 5 years later putting out this first album, how do you feel 2019 Ben would feel if he were to know that half a decade later you'd have this first album?
Oh, he I think he'd be through the roof, because obviously I started writing music before I put that song out, before kind of that 2019. I was making music and releasing music, um, and man, that era of my life was so different from when I started. And I remember I put that I remember I put that song out, and or I wrote that song, and it was a kind of coming from like a very dark place, and so that that kind of era of Days to Waste. I know it's like kind of the official beginning, but to me that's like kind of the middle, if that makes
Right.
any. Because I've been doing this for so long. Yeah, the Suffocate era of Days to Waste was very dark, and so I think he'd be ecstatic and like excited and kind of relieved, that it went somewhere, because that song was kind of a very big um came from like a very vulnerable place, I guess. And yeah, I mean, I guess that whole era of Days to Waste would be like very relieved and excited and grateful, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah. And how do you feel you've kind of grown as a songwriter from that point as well?
definitely better. I think I don't know. It's kind of the same, honestly. I'll go back and listen to old songs and be like, here's what I would have done differently. Here's what I would have said differently. But more or less, it's all the same.
Right, right. And you've collaborated with quite a few different artists over the years as well. Have you had any pinch me moments yet of who you've worked with, or is there anything like these things that you've learned and taken with you from working with them?
Oh, Save It Can Fly. Like this, so that's such an easy one for me. I grew up listening to Save It Can Fly, and he was such a big uh, inspiration to me when I was in high school and in middle school. And God, he carried this dream, honestly, because I would remember walking through the halls or skipping class and listening to his music. And dude, he's such a cool guy too. He's so nice. He's one of the most humble people I've ever met. And working with him, being able to like get him on a song was the pinch me moment. Like I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah. That's good that you gelled so well with him because, there's that saying that don't meet your heroes because what if you were to meet him and he was a tall asshole, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always that risk, but
yeah.
not this guy. I don't
Yeah.
know if he's watching this, but I love you, Braden.
Yeah. Are there any like dream artists that you'd love to collab with that you think would gel really well with the Days to Waste DNA?
Nothing Nowhere was always a really big inspiration as well, and yeah, I'd love to work with him someday.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see like that there is like kind of similarities between you two in terms of like your music style. Like I guess he raps in some of his music, you don't rap, but I mean other than that, like there's definitely parallels, like I say, between you two.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, for sure. He is a huge inspiration in the beginning, and even still to this day, he's a pretty big inspiration.
Yeah. And I don't know how he's managed to put 4 albums out in a year, but
I
crazy.
I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Well,
Saying,
maybe in a few years you can give it a go. So,
hopefully,
yeah,
hope.
yeah. Um, so what are your plans for 2025? Obviously, the start of the year is the album. What happens after that?
What happens after that is I do. You know, I don't want to say whatever I want, but for so long I've taken music so seriously, and every song I've taken so seriously that I've been so hard on myself. And this year is just my goal is just to not be so hard on myself, and I want to release more music more often, all the time, and yeah, that's kind of the goal. Just don't be so hard on myself and release more music.
You got any plans to do some touring or what's going on that front?
No, probably not next year, but we'll see for 2026.
Cool, cool. Well, Ben, thanks so much I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak about the new record. I'm sure it'll go down well. Any final words before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your day?
Just thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. Appreciate it.
Have to have you on, dude. Yeah. I'll let you go. Thanks again. And
Yeah,
yeah, happy holidays, dude.
yeah. Happy holidays. You have a
Yeah,
great one.
yeah. Take care of yourself, dude. And yeah, speak soon.
You too. See ya.
Bye. And that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in to It's Not a Phase. If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Leave a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Follow the podcast on social media. And maybe even join the Patreon or grab some merch from the store. You can find everything that you need at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again. Hopefully catch you on the next one. And remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.